Let me start with a simple question. What happens when life forces you to face the person you once looked down on? What happens when your pride puts you in the hands of someone who knows your deepest flaws and says nothing? This is the story of a young woman who thought respect was beneath her, who believed money could excuse anything. A girl who walked through life as if people were furniture, to be used, ignored, or talked down to. But life doesn't move in a straight line. Sometimes it bends, sometimes it snaps, and sometimes it brings you right back to the same place you once stood, only this time you're the one on your knees. In this story, one moment of arrogance becomes a chain reaction that destroys everything she thought was permanent. Her friends, her comfort, her confidence, even her name. But here's the strange part. Just when it seemed like life had finished her, someone stepped in. Someone powerful, someone invisible, someone watching. Not to save her, not to punish her, but to teach her something she had never learned in all her years of privilege. Humility, reflection, and the cost of treating people badly. She didn't know who was behind it. She didn't know why it was happening. All she knew was that her life was being rearranged by a hand she couldn't see. And when the truth finally came out, it left her speechless. Stay with me. Because what happened to her, what she discovered, what she had to face, it will make you rethink the way you treat the people around you. If you're new here, please subscribe. You don't want to miss our stories. That morning, Ada's SUV rolled into the car wash with that loud, confident hum, the kind of sound that announced her before she even stepped out. But she didn't come down immediately. She sat inside, phone in hand, laughing loudly about last night's party. Who wore what? Who got drunk? Who embarrassed themselves? All the things she believed made life interesting. The workers around her moved like background noise. To her, they weren't people, just tools waiting to be used. Gideon wiped his hands on a cloth and stepped forward. He didn't flinch at her loud voice or the way she glanced at him like he was disturbing her joy. He had survived years of this kind of attitude. He had long learned that strength wasn't always loud. Sometimes, strength just meant staying calm. A sharp snap of her fingers cut through the air. Gideon, hurry up, she said, barely looking at him. If you're going to be dirt, at least be fast dirt, darling. She laughed at her own insult. Gideon didn't reply. He dipped his sponge into the soapy bucket and began washing the SUV. His movements were steady, controlled, almost peaceful. No reaction, no anger, just work. When he finished and Ada was ready to leave, she reached in her seat and pulled out a small, crumpled note. Without thinking twice, she flung it on the ground. Pick that up, she said, smiling like she was doing something clever. It's probably worth more to you than to me. And don't touch my car with your poor hands, please. You'll spoil the upholstery. Gideon crouched quietly and picked up the note. He wiped it clean. His face showed nothing, but he was taking mental notes. The car, the plate number, her tone, every insult. He stored all in silence. Across the road, a black sedan drove by slowly. Behind the wheel was Mr. Nwosu, the dean of the business faculty. He saw everything. The thrown note, the disrespect, the way Ada enjoyed controlling someone weaker. It bothered him deeply, not because she was loud or spoiled. Many students were, but because she was comfortable in her cruelty. That type of character was dangerous. Later that week, confidential reports started spreading. The Onima Group, Ada's family empire, was under serious external investigation. Accounts were being checked, assets frozen, financial pillars shaking. The wealth she wore like a crown was beginning to crack. Ada didn't know it yet. She was too busy mocking others to notice that her own world was about to change. But Gideon was outside all that noise. To everyone who saw him, he was just a car wash boy, quiet, disciplined, easy to overlook. But he noticed everything. The arrogance, the insults, the joy she took in belittling people. He didn't react. He didn't complain. He just observed, like a man recording chapters in a book that would make sense later. By the time Ada sped off, her perfume still hanging in the air, Gideon was already back in position, calm and collected. To the world, he looked powerless. But inside that silence, there was strength and memory. And without knowing it, Ada had just performed the first act, the act that would set everything else in motion. The next morning, Ada showed up at the car wash again, stepping out of her SUV like the ground was beneath her level. Her heels clicked loudly on the concrete, sharp and impatient. She held a half-empty cup of soda, shaking it carelessly while talking on the phone. Whoever she was speaking to was laughing loudly, both of them gossiping about the gala from the night before. Gideon was already working. He didn't look in her direction. He simply continued cleaning the row of SUVs with his usual calm, steady rhythm. He wasn't slow. He was careful. But Ada never cared for the difference. "Hey, you. Slow," she snapped, waving the cup at him. "Move faster, will you?" She didn't even pause her conversation. To her, shouting at someone was as normal as breathing. After Gideon finished washing her car, Ada climbed inside. Instead of sitting properly, she tilted the cup to the side, and the soda spilled across her seat. She shrieked instantly, dropping her phone. "Are you mad?" she yelled, turning the scene into a public drama. "Look at this. Look what you caused." Her voice echoed across the car wash. A few people nearby turned their heads, some shaking their heads at her behavior. But Ada didn't see them. All she saw was a chance to insult someone she believed was beneath her. "Do you know how much this seat costs?" she continued, pointing at Gideon like he was responsible for gravity. "Can you pay for it? You filthy thing." Gideon walked over slowly, his face blank, his breathing even. He grabbed a clean cloth and started wiping the spill. No reaction, no emotion, just focus. He had learned a long time ago that certain people didn't want solutions. They wanted someone to pour their frustrations on. When he was done, Ada still wasn't satisfied. She walked to the trunk, swung it open, and dragged out a big black bag of household waste. The smell hit the air immediately, thick and unpleasant. Ada held the bag up like she was handling something important. "Take this," she said, tossing it toward him. "Dispose of it. It fits you. Honestly, you should be grateful you can even touch the waste that comes from my house." Gideon caught the bag without flinching. He carried it to the far end of the compound and dropped it where trash belonged. He didn't look back, didn't sigh, didn't show anything. But like always, he stored it in his mind. Every insult, every moment. After that, he stepped out briefly and walked to the small shop beside the road with a few naira in his hand. He bought pieces of bread and sachets of water. Outside, a handful of younger working children hovered nearby. Boys who wiped windshields at traffic lights or begged for small change. Gideon handed them the food quietly. A nod, a soft smile. Then he went back to work. Later that afternoon, far from the noise of the car wash, Ada was in her apartment scrolling through social media when her phone rang. She answered casually, expecting her father to talk about some new investment. But the voice she heard was tight, worried, breaking. "Ada, everything is frozen," her father said. "All the accounts. The bank just confirmed it. The authority has seized the Onima Group assets. Everything is under investigation. We might lose everything." Ada shot up from a couch. The room suddenly felt smaller. Her heart raced. "Daddy, what do you mean everything? How can they freeze our accounts? What happened?" But he didn't have answers. All he had was fear, real fear. Her hands trembled. All the luxury in her apartment, the expensive decor, the massive TV, the designer furniture, felt distant, useless, almost unreal. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Mr. Nwosu sat in his office, the lights dim, papers spread before him. He made a secure call to the board of Omega Investments. "They're innocent workers, students, families affected by this collapse," he said calmly. "We need to intervene before everything is swallowed." The call took time. The board debated deeply. But by evening, they approved the rescue plan under strict confidentiality. That same evening, 2 letters arrived at Ada's apartment. The first came from an unknown sender, Omega Investments. The second came from the university, demanding repayment of 3 years of tuition. Her chest tightened. Her world was falling apart in real time. And still, she had no idea that someone had already stepped forward to save her from drowning completely. The next morning, the sun was out, but it felt dim to Ada. Her head was pounding, not from alcohol, but from fear, shame, and the confusion of the day before. She barely slept. Her mind kept replaying her father's shaky voice, the frozen accounts, the destroyed reputation, the letters on her table. She dragged herself to a small cafe near her apartment, trying to act normal. She ordered a simple cup of coffee, something she never thought twice about before. She brought out her card, the one that used to open every door for her. She tapped it confidently. Beep. Declined. She blinked, tried again. Beep. Declined. The sound felt louder than it should have been. People behind her began whispering. Someone cleared their throat impatiently. Ada felt heat crawl up her neck. The card that once held unlimited power had nothing. She stood there, frozen for a moment, before the barista quietly said, "Ma, maybe use another card?" But there was no other card. Ada mumbled something, stepped aside, and left the cafe without her coffee. Outside, the world felt different. Heavy. Watching her. By mid-morning, she forced herself to face the next problem. Her SUV. The same car she used to show off, the same one she insulted Gideon over, the same one she believed made her untouchable, now felt like a liability she couldn't afford. She took it to a dealer. The man inspected it with slow, uninterested eyes before giving her a price that felt like an insult. A tiny portion of what it was worth. Ada wanted to argue, wanted to call her father, wanted to threaten the dealer with lawyers, but she had nothing. No money, no power, no voice. She signed the papers quietly. The handshake was the worst part. Too polite, too pitying, as if he knew this was a fall she never prepared for. She walked home on foot, her heels scraping the sidewalk. People she knew passed by, course mates, party friends, girls she once gossiped with. Their eyes flicked toward her, then away just as fast. No one stopped her. No one called her name. They didn't want to be tied to someone who had just lost everything. By afternoon, she sat on her bed, hugging her knees, trying hard not to cry. For the first time in years, she was truly alone. Then she heard an envelope slide under her door. She got up slowly and picked it up. The paper felt expensive. The emblem on the front, Omega Investments, shone faintly under the room light. Her heartbeat quickened. Inside the letter, the words were sharp and direct. Her family's seized assets had been reorganized. Most of their financial ruin had been stopped. Her tuition debt cleared. She read that part 3 times, not believing it. But there was a condition. She was required to report to Omega Investment headquarters for a mandatory settlement review. The letter stated clearly that the company had intervened to protect her family, and she was expected to work, personally, for the organization as part of the settlement. Her presence was not optional. Her service was not negotiable. And the legal counsel overseeing everything was Dean Nwosu. Ada swallowed hard. She pictured the CEO of Omega Investments, some older businessman with a commanding voice, someone strict but respectable, someone she might be able to charm with a soft tone and carefully rehearsed apology. She imagined smiling politely, wearing her best outfit, using her confidence to win him over. It was the only strategy she knew, but a question nagged at her, refusing to let her rest. Who saved them? Why would a powerful company intervene for her family? And why demand personal service from her? Specifically? She didn't know it yet, but the rescue wasn't a random act of kindness. It was intentional, personal. Somewhere far from her apartment, the true orchestrator, calm, quiet, unseen, reviewed the footage captured from the car wash. Every insult, every moment she snapped her fingers, every time she mocked Gideon. The camera had caught everything. He sent a final message to Nwosu. Play the video during her review. She must see it. Nothing should interrupt the lesson. As the sun began to set, Ada packed a small bag, laid out her best clothes, and rehearsed her apology in front of the mirror. Her voice wavered, her hands shook, but she forced a confident smile. She had no idea she wasn't walking into a negotiation. She was walking straight into the truth. A truth attached to a face she already knew. A face she had brushed aside without a second thought. And her 2 worlds were about to collide. Ada reached the front of Omega Investments with shaky hands. The building looked like something from another world. Tall glass, shiny floors, workers moving with purpose as if they all had somewhere important to be. She stood there for a moment, staring at the revolving doors, trying to gather the confidence she didn't really have. Her heart was beating fast, not from excitement, from fear. Yesterday had been a disaster. Her card had embarrassed her. Her SUV was gone. Her friends disappeared faster than smoke. And now, the one place holding her family's fate was standing right in front of her. She swallowed hard and walked inside. The lobby was too clean, too quiet, too organized. Everything seemed to shine. The kind of place where even your shadow had to behave. She adjusted her bag and continued forward, pretending she wasn't intimidated. At the far end of the lobby stood a man who looked like he didn't smile unless it was absolutely necessary. Tall, neatly dressed, with that strict presence that could silence a whole classroom. At first, Ada thought her eyes were deceiving her. Then she blinked. It was Dean Wosu, her school's dean. Her heart jumped. "Sir," she blurted out before she could stop herself. "Dean Wosu, what are you doing here?" He didn't look surprised to see her. He didn't even break form. "I'm here in my capacity as the CEO's legal counsel," he said, folding the papers in his hand neatly. "For today's meeting, you will address me as such." No warmth, no smile, just a small nod of authority. "Miss Ada," he continued, his voice calm but firm, "follow me." That tone alone told her the day wasn't going to be easy. They walked toward a private elevator, the kind you only see in big companies or movies. Inside, the elevator was silent. Too silent. Ada's thoughts started running. She imagined the CEO, a strict older man, maybe someone she could charm a little or negotiate with. She rehearsed some light smiles, tried to practice a soft apology in her head. But nothing felt right. It all felt forced. When the doors opened, she stepped into a long boardroom with dark wood walls, leather chairs, and that cold air that comes from too much AC and too much money. The room felt like judgment. She sat where Nwosu pointed. "Before anything," he said, taking the remote, "there is something you must see." The CEO insisted. Ada frowned, confused. Then the screen lit up. At first, it was random clips, campus, people walking. But then she saw herself. Her own face, her own voice, her own body language, the arrogance she didn't even realize people noticed. They showed her snapping her fingers at workers, shouting at people who were just doing their job, laughing at someone begging her to be patient. Clips she didn't even remember. And then, Gideon, calm, quiet, enduring everything she threw at him. She felt her stomach twist. Her breath slowed. The room suddenly felt too hot. She wished she could disappear. She had always convinced herself she was just being herself. That was normal, that people should endure it. But seeing it on a big screen, sharp, clear, with no excuses to hide behind, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. Real shame. When the video stopped, the silence was heavy. Nwosu placed a thick contract in front of her. "The CEO requires 1 year of full-time, unpaid service," he said calmly. "This is how the company has decided to save your family. This is how you make amends. The terms are not up for negotiation." Ada stared at the contract. Her hands trembled. She felt like crying but held it back. She wanted to argue, to defend herself, but every clip she had just seen kept replaying in her head. She had no defense. None. Her family's assets had been saved. Her school fees cleared. Someone powerful had stepped in. And this contract was the price. She picked up the pen. Her signature shook, but she signed it. When she finished, Nwosu gathered the papers without emotion. "You'll report to a facility near your campus," he said. "The owner will be expecting you. When the time is right, you'll meet the CEO. Everything you saw today is part of the lesson you must learn." Ada stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak. The contract felt heavy in her hand. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. Each second reminded her of the new life she was stepping into, a life she didn't want, but one she had earned. By the time she stepped out into the lobby again, the building no longer looked impressive. It looked like the beginning of a punishment she couldn't escape. And somewhere she couldn't see, someone was watching, waiting, making sure every step of her lesson unfolded exactly as planned. The morning sun wasn't even fully up when Ada reached the address written in her contract. She stood in front of the small building, confused for a moment. This wasn't some corporate branch office. This wasn't a training center. It wasn't even close to the skyscraper she had visited the day before. It was a car wash, the one she came to regularly. She looked around, hoping she wouldn't find Gideon. Everyone looked at her amusingly and curiously. It was very unusual for her to be there without her SUV and the regular loud entry. She swallowed hard. A manager walked up to her, tall, neat, and sharp-eyed, and handed her a folded uniform. "This is yours. You'll start from Bay 1, he said, pointing toward a line of dusty cars. No greeting, no smile, no special treatment, just instructions. Ada accepted the uniform, unsure of where to place her pride. She changed in a small back room, stared at her reflection for a moment, and barely recognized the girl in front of her. Just a plain shirt and trousers that made her feel painfully ordinary. She stepped out and began working. The first hour dragged, scrubbing tires, washing mud off bumpers, bending, stretching, carrying buckets. Her hands started shaking from the strain, and sweat soaked through her collar. Every movement reminded her of the same harsh words she had thrown around so carelessly. "Move faster. You're too slow. Do your job. You filthy thing." Now she was the one being observed. Now she was the one avoiding eye contact. Customers walked past without noticing her. She felt invisible, and for the first time, she understood how she had made others feel. Around noon, a silence spread through the workers. Heads turned. An engine growled at the entrance. A sleek, armored Mercedes-Benz rolled in, quiet but commanding. The type of car people usually stepped out of with bodyguards. Ada's breath caught. The doors opened slowly. From the back seat, a man stepped out wearing a sharp navy suit, simple cufflinks, and the calm confidence of someone used to leading silently. He carried a briefcase, walked around the car, checked something with the driver, then turned toward the wash area. The manager straightened immediately. Workers froze. Ada didn't move. She couldn't. The man took a few steps closer, and her heart dropped straight to the floor. It was him, Gideon, the quiet worker she had insulted. The man she had mocked over spilled soda, garbage bags, and her exaggerated sense of importance. The same man who had said nothing while she acted like the whole world owed her something. Now he stood in front of her, not in dusty clothes, not holding a sponge, not quiet and unseen, but with the sharp, steady posture of someone carrying real power. "Good morning, Ada," he said gently. No anger, no sarcasm, no revenge in his voice. Just calm certainty. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat locked. "I'm sure you've put the pieces together," he continued. "Yes, I'm the CEO of Omega Investments." She felt dizzy. He went on, his voice steady and surprisingly soft. "I didn't come here pretending. I work here sometimes. When my head gets too full, when the pressure becomes too much, this place reminds me of who I'm supposed to be." He looked at her directly, not unkindly. "And while I was here," he said, "I saw how you treated people. Not just me, everyone. So I recorded it. Not to destroy you, but to show you yourself." Her eyes burned instantly. Tears rose before she even realized it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. It was all she could manage. "I was foolish blind. I didn't know who I was becoming." Gideon nodded slowly, as though he'd been waiting to hear those words. "You'll finish the 3 months of service," he said. "Every weekend. Work honestly. Learn from this. And when you complete it, your final year will be fully funded. No one will know this story unless you choose to tell it." She wiped her face with trembling fingers. "This is not punishment," he added. "It's a reset." Ada nodded, unable to speak. Then, without another word, she went back to her bay, back to the bucket, back to her sponge. But this time, the shame didn't crush her. It pushed her toward something new. Humility, growth, clarity. And somewhere behind her, Gideon watched quietly, not as a judge, but as someone who hoped she would rise better than she had fallen.